And we're rolling.
The way I become acquainted with Gilbert, I was in search of a horse for my first son, and I had mother son was a baby, but this one was ready to ride, and I had some really great bred quarter horses, some Doc Bar and Peppy Sand, and these type horses, like the cutting line of quarter horses, and I saw right quick that really I didn't want to turn my firstborn son loose on one of them.
Yeah.
And so I started trying to get a little Welsh pony for him, and she's a runaway and different things. And I thought, man, if I could only had a horse like I had when I was a kid. And Mama says, have you talked to Clarence, which was her brother, my Uncle Clarence? You might be able to get old Chris back. And I'd sold my favorite horse while I was in college at Wilburton. I'd quit riding her, been riding her since I was in the 6th grade. Had all kind of opportunities to get rid of her, but she was just right with me. Well, here I'm off in college, and I find, away from her, and you just kind of lose a little bit of that contact. And I decided, well, since it's my favorite uncle and his grandkids just moved here from California, I'll let them have her, And so anyway, I couldn't get her back from my uncle. I tried to offer him a lot more than what he gave me for 3 horses, and couldn't get her. So my brother and my dad tell me, well, there's a man in the mountains up here at Medicine Springs. I said, well, I've been hearing about him since I was in high school, but I said, he sounded like he's kind of radical to me, and because I'd been hearing about wanting to run a horse 100 miles through the mountains, and so anyway, they said, well, he's still got some of them little Choctaw horses similar to old Chris. He's still got a few of them. And that horse that you looked at a while ago, that Appaloosa looking horse, was out of one of his Choctaw mares. He went back to one of them. And so I go up and meet him, and that's when he decides that I didn't know much about horses because I didn't know about Frank Hopkins, And but anyhow, that's how I met Gilbert, and I started looking through his records, and I was so fascinated with the horses, and he'd show me pictures of them in the picture albums. Then we'd go out on the range on the mountain and find them, and then he'd say, well, now you saw that in his mama, you saw this when you saw that in there, and I could remember every one of them that I saw in that book, in those picture albums, and so then he started showing me their pedigrees, and how they had like 7 generations wrote out on every one of them, and which I still have all of those, and I got to noticing that there was very few of them that was Oklahoma Choctaws, and I think I finally found out where there was 9. He only had 7 or 8, and Dr. John Gray at Tulsa had one, and a guy in Washington State had one, and a guy over by Miller Jumbo had one, and just a few places like that. And we gathered up like 9 females, and it was all Oklahoma Choctaw. But I went and told Gilbert. I said, Gilbert, what I noticed, I said, you don't have very many Choctaw horses. He said, well, what are you talking about? He said, hell, over half of everything I got's Choctaw, And I said, well, yeah, it's got some Choctaw blood in it, but it's not 100% Choctaw. Well, do you think it makes a better horse? And I said, well, I don't know if it makes a better horse or not, but I said, I could see the value in trying to keep some of them 100% Choctaw. If you've got some that's 100%, and there's a way of keeping them that way, culturally, I think it would be good to do that. Well, you sound just like that Dr. Spangenberg over in Virginia. Said he's with the ALBC. I said, well, what's that? Well, that's American Livestock Breeds Conservancy. He said they want to make sure that nothing becomes extinct, and said he wanted to preserve rare bloodlines and rare breeds, and said he says the same thing you're saying, And I said, well, I think he's right. And he said, well, now I told him he could have every Choctaw mare and a Choctaw horse that I had if he wanted to fence that place of his in Virginia and put him on it. And said he ain't never got the fence built yet. And said, I don't know. I said, well, Gilbert, some of these old mares are getting old and they're not going to be around much longer. And if we don't do something, we're not going to get it done. And he gave me one of them. Of all the time that I knew Gilbert, he gave me 2 horses. I mean, he gave me lots of studs. It was causing problems. Young stallions. It was going to neighbors and things. But he'd only gave me 2 females as long as I ever knew him. That's all he ever gave me. And one was his old Southwest line, and one was a pure Choctaw mare called Choctaw Rooster. Anyway, I got all of those mares together and gathered up the stallions, and we ended up with like 4 stallions and 9 mares. And then Herman Carter had another mare that was all Choctaw that I never could get from him, but we got a stud colt out of it, and Dr. Sponenberg bought it, and it's still his stallion, and it's in Virginia now, breeding nothing but Choctaws, But he and I collaborated back and forth about we need to breed this mare to this stallion, or we can breed that offspring to that one, and if we get a stud colt from that one, we can breed it to these over here, and then we keep going back and forth like this, and keep the lines pure without getting too close to breeding it,
So he finally got on board with all Choctaw ponies?
Dr. Sponenberg, yes. Oh, and Gilbert did, yes, very much so.
Good.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, he just didn't, he thought, he was just looking at them as being Spanish Mustangs, and that's all that he was interested in, as long as they were being bred to what he considered pure Spanish, whether it was a plain, because he didn't distinguish the difference between in the horses between the Plains Indians or the Eastern Indians, or the ones that was here. He just knew the horse had all Spanish markers, or the history on them proved to be that way. Now, he didn't really believe in the DNA, blood tapping dogs. He said, based on what? He said, now if we're trying to compare it to something that's over in Spain now or somewhere, he said, the horses over there are not the same now as what they were back then when Cortez or Columbus first brought them over. But later when they started basing it on like the core groups of horses and different things and the history and all of that, I guess. But he was more convinced on the thorough research and history and the people he dealt with, people with integrity, that when an old Choctaw gave him his word that horse was nothing but, he believed it to be that way. He bought 1 or 2 from horse traders that he made them sign an affidavit that horse was exactly what he said it was. But then when they did the blood tapping and all on them, they turned out to be that way, So he was that thorough in everything that he did, and the blood tapping for me just made me respect his records and his history and everything that he had kept a whole lot more,
Right.
So yeah, he got on board, but he still didn't help me as much as he could have. But he had a way of making people work together,
Yeah.
And a horse that I needed really, really, really bad, he would give it to somebody else that was helping us in the registry, where I'd have to work with them, and we'd have to get along where I could breed to their horse, and things like that, which I already got along with them anyway, but it made them feel more important because I was having to use their horse,
Yeah. Right.
and they were in turn helping him with his bills, like paying bills for him and helping him with groceries and different things, but he was a pretty good manipulator, but his horses was his life.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way, and his kids hold it against him today. The 2 daughters he's got. Everybody blamed him for bringing his wife from Albuquerque or from Seagraves, Texas, up here to these mountains in the rocks, and all that, but she seemed to love it here. You know, my mother and them knew her. I didn't never really know her that well, but my mother knew her, and my dad and my brother and all of them knew her real well. But she died of cancer just about the time I was getting to know him. But I felt like I've heard so many stories about her. I felt like I knew her, you know, but I really didn't. You know.
Was she native, Navajo or something?
No, he told me. No, I don't think she was. I think it was he. I think his mother was the one that had Native American blood in her, you know. And he wasn't. Like I say, he wasn't too high on his daddy. He respected a lot about his daddy, but his daddy was again wearing sidearms and guns and stuff, you know. And his daddy was born at the headwaters of the Mississippi River up in Minnesota. And when he was 12 years old, they come down into Missouri and went to the same one-room schoolhouse as Frank and Jesse James. And he said that his daddy was so hard against six guns. He said that there had never been a story told, the true story of Frank and Jesse James, and the way their family actually was, and all of that. And he said if those boys hadn't had access to a gun as quick as they did, you know, they wouldn't have done what they done and got off on the road that they got off on, and all of that, you know. And he said, now I think they done right what they needed to done, and if I'd had a gun, I'd have helped them. And that's that. And he said, and that's just the reason that you don't need a gun. That's the reason you don't need one, you know. But he said, you know, in 1922, when he went, he actually went to the military. To 17 years old. He actually was wearing a side gun, you know, and he went to the government and he wanted to know what they done with Geronimo's and with all those horses that they didn't kill that come out of the Palo Duro Canyon and all of that. And this was another thing that made me believe the Hidalgo story, because they done so much stuff on TV to the O'Reillys to discount it all, you know. And Bob Bristlin knew Frank Hopkins, so we know he existed. And anyhow, when Gilbert told him that he wanted some of the same blood of that horse that Hopkins got, that he raised that Hidalgo horse from, and the military told him that the lion's share of those horses that they didn't kill went to the Dixon Ranch, which they said you wouldn't be interested in those horses because they breed nearly everything they've got to Percheron and thoroughbred stallions to make them bigger, because they sell us cavalry remounts out of those little Native American mares, the little Indian mares, and said they sell as many, some years as many as 10,000 horses in one day. That was in 1922. Now that was a big horse business, you know, back then. Wow. And he said, but the Patterson Ranch got a big part of the nicer little mares that really showed the type, and said the way they understand it, that they have never added anything to it but the Native American horses. So Gilbert went to them, and he told them what he wanted. He said, of course, they was a group of those guys around, said that he thought they was playing cards or doing something. I forget now just what it was, but he said, I come up there, big old 17-year-old kid, and said they wanted to know what if they could help me, you know, and said, I told them, yeah, I said, I was interested in some of that blood of the great endurance horse Hidalgo, and said, they just kind of give me a horse laugh, you know, said, hell, you'd have thought I was wearing silk underwear. Said, when I got through talking to them, said they knew I meant business, and I said, the old boy said, my son, said, just a minute, said, now cool off just a little bit, said, we can tell you're very passionate about your horses, and we can see you are serious, and said, we didn't mean to make light of it, you know, and they said, we'll tell you what we've got. Said, you've got to understand that was 32 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, and said, we haven't added a thing to those horses. They've been, some of them sold, some of them died, but said we haven't added any other stallions to them. And to tell you that there's a horse out there that's bred just like the daddy of that Hidalgo horse, said I couldn't go pick one of them out if my life depended on it. But now, that horse could have had several mares could have been bred to that stallion, because one of Geronimo's main men was riding that horse, and according to the scouts, they couldn't nobody stay up with it. You know, he could run all over that desert out there, and they couldn't nobody stay anywhere as close to him, and that's why Hopkins wanted him, you know, to breed to his little Lakota Sioux mare. So he says that horse could have had a full brother in there. That stallion, that horse that Hopkins got could have had a full brother in that bunch. But you got to understand, they didn't let us keep any grown male horses, you know, when we got these. So said, you just go out there and you pick out your Hidalgo horses, you know, whatever you know. And he went out and picked out like I think 5 horses, and he brought some of them here. So now here's Gilbert's story was. He said, I can't ever. Now he always liked Hopkins, and he always referred to him as being the greatest endurance rider that ever lived, you know. And he convinced me we could have a 50 and 100 mile race on that, you know. On them stories, you know, and because I hadn't heard of him, I thought I was educated in agriculture, but he thought I wasn't, and so anyway, he said, "Now I can't swear that I said I know why we named that stallion that I give Eddie when I named him Hidalgo, you know, because I think he's built for endurance, and I think it said you could ride him to hell and back." Said now I said he'll take you there and he'll bring you home, you know, and said I think he's as much of that kind of horse as anything we've ever had, you know, and he said, but I can't swear, and he said, and if I do have that blood, it's going to come through that Carmen blood. It's going to come, and Carmen was the grandmother of this horse, you know, and that it comes from Albuquerque area and out of the Sandias Mountains and around Horse Peak, New Mexico. And anyway, he says I can't swear that I've got the Hidalgo blood, but I can swear that I'll come nearer having it than anybody else that ever professed to raise a pure Spanish Mustang. Said there ain't another person, another breeder in any registry that'll come as near having Hidalgo blood as I'll have, you know. And he said, I've always believed I've had it running in through the veins of some of these horses here on Blackjack Mountain. Not my Choctaw horses, but the Southwest horses. And I said, well, I can see how you can figure that, you know. And so, because the horses that he got, you know, went back to a mare called Carmen, you know. And it went back to a mare called T. Harris Lightning that said she was fast as the lightning in the T. Harris Mountain, T. Harris Canyon, you know, in New Mexico, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's how I got to start, why I went to him about horses to start with, and then, you know, as I studied his pedigrees and all that stuff, you know, that's when I decided that something needed to be done about the Choctaw deal. And I think I told you a while ago that we went 14 years and never sold a female out of those. We kept all of those mares. Then, when I get ready, Spangenberg keeps telling me, Dr. Spangenberg keeps telling me, you know, we've got to get this blood dispersed out in different places around over the United States in case of some natural catastrophe, whether it be a disease, whether it be a hurricane, a tornado, anything. It might just wipe anything out all at one time, you know. Right. We need little pockets, breeding cells, groups around over the United States. So there's a guy in Florida that has been helpful in saving the Bengal tiger, a donkey from Germany or France somewhere, and some more things like that. A guy that is really, really well off. He said that he would take, I think he was going to take 11 head of the horses, and And it was the first time I was ever going to realize any pay out of them. You know, my numbers was getting on up there. You know, and this was in '95, and I had the numbers up high enough then, going 14 years without selling any of them, and those other ones kept having babies. My first 9 mares kept having babies, and then their babies was having babies over that 14 years. So I was building up a lot of females, you know. So that's when the Spangenberg was really getting serious then about. But see, I had went from like 1982, you know, of doing this up until '95, you know. And well, 1980 on up in there around 80, 81, somewhere around in there to 95, 96, I decided I'd get rid of some of them. And he was going to take Black Camp, which is that black stallion that's still up there, you know. And so anyway, he was going to take him and some mares in a mare called White Painted Lady, that is the mother of that stallion that's got the turkey track on him in these pictures. He was going to take her and some more. I forget all that. I could, if I thought about it, I could name all of them. But I can remember her. The reason I remember her is he wanted something with color and something that was real flashy. It would produce color, which just like in that sun there, you know. And when I checked them, all of them come back okay, except I had one that they thought was a reactor to EIA, and that was her, a White Painted Lady mare.
Oh, really?
And so then they put me under quarantine in September of '95, as soon as I had her tested. And then they finally got into testing the rest of my horses, like in November or December, and that's when they put everything I had under quarantine. And every time they'd test something, they'd find everything positive, everything, you know. And so they about put me out of business. Right when I was selling those, because it was a time when I was needing to for my kids going to college and to help feed what I had, you know. And he was going to give me $1,250 a piece for them, which I hadn't heard of getting that kind of money for them. But Dr. Spangenberg is who had made the deal. He said, you have sacrificed and waited all these years and basically gave your stud babies away, you know, or whatever. But these little females you've been keeping and all, you know, you need to get something for them, you know. And that guy was going to do it. And so it was, I'd already went and bought a bunch of hay and stuff, you know, thinking I was going to get that money for them, you know.
Yeah.
Then that guy, he didn't even, you know, I tried to keep him, you know, like, well, when I get out from under quarantine, you know, I'll take him, you know, he'd take him. Well, he was worried because he had those donkeys and stuff there that had come from Germany that cost bukus of money, you know, that getting them imported over and all of that. He was afraid of getting a disease of them, so he backed plumb out on it. And then other people that was going to take horses from me, since they kept me under quarantine from that time till June of 2001, they decided, well, we ain't never going to be able to get anything from Rickman, and all he's going to have is going to be something diseased. Very few of them really stuck with me, but some did. A lot of people did, and then because after that long a time, they had to get to thinking, well, if he, you know, hadn't proved those guys crooks or outlaws or trying to do him wrong or whatever, but now he's not ever going to. So they started buying horses from other people, which they wasn't getting Choctaw horses, but they were getting horses, Spanish horses. And then when you lose those customers, then they're just gone. You know, you've lost them. And so all that time, my numbers in the mountains were going up because they kept, every time they'd check one of my horses, they'd say, now are you sure this didn't come from the mountains? Are you sure this didn't come from the mountains? And every time I said one did, you could count on it being hot. It'd be positive, you know. And then, you know, I'd have to say it, you know, it came out of there 3 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to get the helicopters and go kill everything, you know. And then that went on like I said, all those years. They got to, after they saw that we raised 126 negative babies out of positive mamas, positive daddies, and then they decided that I was right, that they probably did have natural antibodies, but they wouldn't publish that. They never did publish it that they had natural antibodies in any of their deals. But one of the reasons that they wouldn't, I think, is because they killed so many people's prize horses, so many old people's old keepsake horses, their grandpa's old horse that was 30 years old, that they would have kept him, because that was a tie to their family or a tie to something, or their kid's special horse, and that they would have been liable in a class action lawsuit.
Right.
And so all they done is they got rid of some of the people in the state ag department and put other people in there, And then when we checked all these horses, again, all out of the mountains, and they know they're out of the mountains, 673 head, not a one of them positive, not one. But it's because they knew that horses had to come out of the mountains or be killed, or I couldn't claim them and I couldn't hold anybody liable for whatever happened to them. So they quit being sick. They didn't have no disease up there no more. And some of those was 30 years old, 25, 30 years old, and they wasn't any of them.
And then they were miraculously healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
outrageous.
that's been really, really hard for me to swallow. I had this one boy that's Choctaw, not a boy, he's a grown man, and I gave his son a horse that looked like the Hidalgo horse, and I'd give it to him when his mom and dad got a divorce, and they wanted to check everybody's horses that had got horses from me. Well, this guy wasn't going to let them check his, and then finally decided he would. They found out. Well, he told them that he had told them that he had got them. One of the vets knew his brother's boy was best friends with him, so they knew that he had been getting horses from me. So when they finally got around to checking him, they said, "Yeah, snake charmer is positive." I said, "Marty, if you'll take that horse to another vet, don't tell him that the state's checked him. Bet you $100 he'll be negative." And so he had his girlfriend to load this horse up, changed his name to Old Paint, and went in and said, "Well, my kid's gonna do a little play day, and we want to check Old Paint here, So they check Old Paint, send him to the lab at Sapulpa, I think it was, and come back, he's negative. Go anywhere you want to in the world with him. And that rocked on for over a year. That the state never would give in, and he kept telling them. Marty kept telling them. He said, "I'm American Indian. They ain't never been anything that the American Indians ever had, especially in the way of horses. That our government's tried to dismount the Indians, tried to get rid of their horses for years. Now that they can't do it militarily, now they're doing it through the Ag Department." And said, I'm an Indian. I'm going to the American Civil Liberties Union. I'm going to get me the best lawyer they got, and I'm going to sue y'all for everything it's worth,
Yeah.
And did you know, I told you a while ago we had Dr. Leroy Coggins here. That's one of the reasons he came, was because of this. And he also got Dr. Chuck Issel on a tape-recorded phone conversation where our state senator and our state representative told our state vet, said, because we sent this blood of that horse off for a different type test, one that didn't test for the antibody, it actually tests for the disease. But they would never do it because it cost $100 and something to do that test, And so we forced them to do that test on it, and then they wouldn't give us the results. The reason they wouldn't give the result, then when Marty's talking to that man that got all that money from the National Institute of Health, he said, "Well, I understand this horse come from a Rickman herd." Marty said, "Well, now what makes you think?" "Yeah, well, that's what I understood." And he said, "Oh, did Dr. Floyd tell you that?" And so he started trying to back up and started not to answer the question. Next thing you know, both of them had told her that they would have her job if she notified them and told them that horse come from our horses. That it had to be an unbiased test, And so anyway, he got a letter, and I can bring you a copy of it and show it to you tomorrow, that says they apologized to him. they said that we did contaminate your snake charmer's blood in our lab, and we are very sorry for any inconvenience or any embarrassment or any of this that this might have caused you, and no. He is indeed negative, and we're sorry for what's happened, you know, and all of that. And we got that letter, you know, where they admitted that they had done it. But he was the only one. They threatened to lock him up. They threatened him with the sheriff, the DA. He said, you can come and lock me up, but you better make sure you got the right paperwork when you come, you know. But my kids already lost everything that's important to him, our family life, their mother, and all that. And said, you're not taking their horse. Not as long as I'm able, you're not taking it, you know. They've still got the horse. Those kids done graduated high school and all that, and they still got their horse.
What was behind this, do you think? I mean, why were